Hi students, welcome to the platform of eGurukul and Dr. Bhatia Medical Coaching Institute. I am Dr. Ramyasri, your Obgyn Guru. As your exams are coming near, you all know that practicing MCQs is very important. So here I have come up with some clinical based MCQs for a short discussion so that you will be habituated. So it's a hardly 10 minutes video. You can always watch it whenever you want, just to understand how to approach questions, clinical based MCQs, right? So let's not do delay and let's watch the clinical based MCQs here. So the first question what I have is, all are true regarding intrapartum antibiotic prophylaxis except. All are true regarding intrapartum antibiotic prophylaxis except. So regarding the intrapartum antibiotic prophylaxis, normally we give intrapartum antibiotic prophylaxis. So here he means mainly for the during delivery or cesarean section. Advised when parturient develops intrapartum pyrexia. So do you advise intrapartum antibiotic prophylaxis only when the parturient develops pyrexia? It's effective against both early onset and late onset neonatal group B streptococcus. Advised to women with group B streptococcus bacteria in the current pregnancy. Should be given to the woman with previous baby affected with group B streptococcus disease even if the swab negative in the current pregnancy. So here they are mainly discussing about intrapartum antibiotic prophylaxis, especially for the group B streptococcus, guys. So we all know that group B streptococcus mainly causes neonatal meningitis. So when do we give this intrapartum prophylaxis? And this group B streptococcus prophylaxis, we mainly give injection benzyl penicillin. And we give benzyl penicillin not only when, so we give this injection benzyl penicillin not just if mother has group B streptococcus positive, we should also give when it should be given to a woman with previous baby affected with GBS disease even if the swab negative in the current pregnancy. So this is absolutely correct, right? So you should give group B streptococcus के लिए against group B streptococcus injection benzyl penicillin not only for, even if this pregnancy it is negative, still you can give because she had previously affected pregnancy, right? So that you can prevent neonatal meningitis. And you should always give benzyl penicillin at the onset of labor. So ideally, now the recent guidelines are at 37 weeks of gestation, we should take a vaginal swab. We should take a vaginal swab and check for group B streptococcus. If it turns out to be positive, then at the onset of labor, you have to give intrapartum prophylaxis with injection benzyl penicillin. It should be advised to women with GBS bacteria in the current pregnancy. Yes. So if they are group B streptococcal positive, you should always advise them to give the injection benzyl penicillin. It is effective against both early onset and late onset GBS. So when you are giving to the mother, it is going to protect the baby from early onset GBS. It is preventing the transmission of GBS from now. So it is going to prevent the baby from the early onset GBS. So it does not protect the baby from the late onset GBS. So it does not protect against late onset. Advised when parturient develops intrapartum pyrexia? Yes. So if mother has pyrexia during intrapartum, so definitely we give the intrapartum antibiotic prophylaxis. So all the other options are correct except the B. So the answer here is B, right? Next question. A 28-year-old amenorrheic woman who wishes to become pregnant attends the fertility clinic complaining of galactorrhea, mild visual disturbance. Her serum prolactin was found to be elevated. So this mainly tells we are dealing with a prolactinoma. So the classical triad of the prolactinoma is actually galactorrhea, infertility and decreased libido. So here patient came for the infertility, patient has galactorrhea and this looks like a macroadenoma, guys. Why is this macroadenoma? Because there is mild visual disturbance. So when there is a mild visual disturbance, it mainly means you are dealing with a macroadenoma and this might be compressing the optic chiasma. So usually the macroedema will compress the optic chiasma. It will compress the optic chiasma and it will cause bitemporal hemianopia. right? So MRI scan of the head was performed, which showed the presence of macroprolactinoma. So same as what we have guessed. So usually whenever you are approaching a clinical question, you should always see that by the history you should try to identify the what is the problem, right? But without suprasellar extension. What is the most appropriate first line management? Radiotherapy, cabergoline, quinabolide, bromocriptine. So basically whenever you have a patient with, even though they have macroadenoma, you can always try to use medical therapy. If medical therapy fails or if the size of the tumor is increasing, then you go for the surgical management, that is transsphenoidal hypophysectomy, right? But now I don't require to go for the surgical management. I can first try with the medical management. So I am going to remove the radiotherapy. There is no surgical option also. Now between cabergoline, quinabolide and bromocriptine, what is the drug preferred? So ideally the drug of choice is cabergoline, but as patient has come to you and she wants to become pregnant, bromocriptine is more ideal than cabergoline for those women who wants to get pregnant. So infertility with macroadenoma, always remember macro or microadenoma, always we prefer bromocriptine. Other patients you can go with cabergoline. So those who are not trying to get pregnant or fertile patients or family completed, if they come to you with macroprolactinoma या microadenoma या macroadenoma, then go with cabergoline. But here the first line drug will be bromocriptine, guys. Okay? Right? So most of you would have gone wrong with answering the cabergoline here. So that's how you have to control your silly mistakes, right? So let's see the next question now. How to see if pessary is adequately inserted or not? So how do you know that if pessary is adequately inserted or not? So normally this is how the pessary looks like. So it is not the same size of the pessary which should be inserted to everyone. So you have to, the diameter of the pessary is measured by lower border of the pubic symphysis to posterior fornix. So from the lower border of pubic symphysis to posterior fornix, you have to measure the distance. That is equal to diameter of the pessary which should be inserted. So after you insert the pessary, if you insert a small size, when you ask the patient to strain or cough or laugh, the pessary will come out. If you insert a large size, please observe, it is going to compress the urethra between the pessary and pubic symphysis, and they can have acute retention of urine. So always after you insert the pessary, you should ask the patient to cough or laugh or strain and see whether pessary is not coming out, and you should ask the patient to pass urine. Unless until she passes urine, you should never send her home. Right? So let us see now whether we have these options. How to see the pessary is adequately inserted or not? Patient feels discomfort, does not come out during voiding. After Valsalva, pessary does not come out. 1 finger gap between vagina and ring. So no. So after Valsalva, pessary should not come out is a correct. It do not come out during voiding? No. Patient should be able to void after you have inserted pessary. That would have been more better answer. So after Valsalva also pessary does not come out is a better answer here what we have. So that's about the pessary. So this is a ring pessary which we use for mainly prolapse, right? Yes, a very interesting question. 30-year-old para 2 living 2 has menorrhagia for 2 years. She was ligated for 4 years back. 30 years, okay? See, whenever you are reading a clinical question, always take care of the age of the patient. So she was ligated 2 years back, 4 years back. On investigation, she is found to have 2 into 2 centimeters submucous myoma. What will be the best management option for her? Total abdominal hysterectomy, danazol 400 milligrams twice daily for 3 months, GMR analogs, hysteroscopic myoma resection. Now she was ligated 4 years back, means they are telling that she is already her family is completed. Now most of you might jump for the answer of hysterectomy because her family is complete, but I would like to ask you what is her age? Age is 30 years and the size of the fibroid is also small. It is only 2 into 2 centimeters. Why not? Why do you want to go immediately for hysterectomy? Can't we wait on hysterectomy? Now if you really get this patient to your hospital, will you directly jump or would you like to first try with medical management? Right? So as her age is small, now if she was saying 50 years or something, I would agree that I would have gone for total abdominal hysterectomy. But as she is only 30 years, I will not go with total abdominal hysterectomy. Next, then you might ask, okay, why not we'll go for myoma resection? So remember, always myoma resection or myomectomy should be preferred for patients who are infertile, because whenever you are trying to do myoma resection, there's always chance of excess bleeding and you going into hysterectomy, the patient going into hysterectomy. And another important point, even after you remove this fibroid, there's a chance of again recurrence. Then why not we try first medical management and then go for surgical management, right? You understand what is my point here? Ash is just 30 years. Let us first try with medical management and then we can go for surgical management, especially because the size of the fibroid is also very small. It's only 2 into 2 centimeters. So there are drugs which can decrease the size of the fibroid also. So danazol and GnRH analogs both can decrease the size of the fibroids. But I would prefer GnRH analogs over danazol because of the androgenic side effects. The drugs which can decrease the size of the fibroid are GnRH analogs, that is both GnRH agonists and GnRH antagonists, because they are going to create a state of pseudomenopause. Even danazol, it is antigonadotrophin, so it creates a state of pseudomenopause. Gestrinone, this is also antigonadotrophin, so creates a state of pseudomenopause. Next we have unipristol acetate and mifepristone. These two are selective progesterone receptor modulators. These two are selective progesterone receptor modulators, but still can be given for the decreasing the size of the fibroid, and they usually act very well to decrease the size of the fibroid. Unipristol acetate is 5 to 10 milligrams per day, and you can give for 3 months. So that's about the small clinical discussion of some MCQs. I think we have covered at least 4 questions here in 10 minutes. So I'll see you all with some more clinical based MCQs. So as your exam is coming out, every month I'll send you some good questions and good points. So keep seeing, keep learning. Thank you so much, guys.